Couple of minutes, so please grab a plate of food, grab yourself a drink and find a seat. We'll get going in the next couple of minutes. Thank you. Just up the front. Yulma, welcome. Thank you so much for being here in the room, and thank you also for the significant audience we have watching the live stream this morning as well. My name's Ian Campbell, National Communications Director for Palliative Care Australia. What a day to be here, the second last sitting day of 2024, and there's certainly a buzz in the air. Thank you to our MPs and senators who've made time to join us this morning. Today feels like one of those days to me, a moment where need, actions and timing come together to galvanise the next steps of reform ahead of the election. Reform that delivers better access to palliative care for all Australians who need it, wherever they are. Today we launch our 2025 federal election platform and present a compelling case that deepens and matures the positive progress that's been made over the last 3 years across health, aged care and disability services, and puts quality of life at the end of life, at the centre of the experience those who are ageing and those with a terminal illness can expect. But first, representing Australia's original palliative carers and welcoming us to his country, please welcome Ngambri and Ngunnawal custodian Paul Girawal House.
Amandangu, Wargawari. Thank you, Ian, and Yuradu Marang. Good day, everyone. Yuandu, Paul Girawal House. My name is Paul Girawal House. Nadu Maradu Mare Biringo, Gujigango, Ngambri, Cambri, Nuru Nurumbango, Muramaginya. I was born here, the centre of my ancestral country, at the old Canberra Hospital. God bless it. Anyone born in the old Canberra Hospital? Yes, great to see 3 or 4 hospital alumni here today. Gialang is our belonging. We all have a belonging, no matter who we are on this planet. And Niaway Gun and Gijul is our identity. So Noy Goy Malang, Marambang Malang, Nina Nain Mura Buramba Bira Gawayam Bana Nina Nurambango. It's wonderful. It's fabulous to be here, to be able to share this welcome to country with you all here today. Yinjamara Bala, Claire Holland Gujigang, Claire Holland House, my respects to Claire Holland House, who received many of our people here on country. And we have lots of family who have gone through the transformation. And we acknowledge them. We acknowledge everyone, actually, that goes through the transformation. So, Nyari Njamali, Ngambri, Cambri, Wolgalu, Wallabaloa, Ngunnawal, Ngarigo, Aradri, Mujigang, Yanang Bujayandu. My respects to Ngambri, Cambri, Wolgalu, Wallabaloa, Ngunnawal, Ngarigo, Aradri, elders, past and present. Nyari Njamarabo, Mujigango, Nurumbanjigu, and Ninya Yiridu. My respects to all people from all parts of the country, First Nation people from all parts of the country. Ngambri, Cambri, Wolgalu, Wallabaloa, Mayinga, Mbanya, Ninyoga, Nurumbangoldara. Ngambri, Cambri, Wolgalu, Wallabaloa people welcome you all to country. You say Yuma, we say Gurabari. Gurabari in language means welcome, as an invitation always to our country. It's a good acceptance word, a word of acceptance, and I'll share more about those briefly here. So nadu wuruga bigi balabambo go balagi bango bo going golila dumbali now muruwai marambo. We listen to the old people, the ancestors, the elders, and they show us the good path, the right path, the straight path. Mara Muru creating pathways. Muru Wada one track, Dulagang Muru straight path. Going Guliala, Bilingali now, Yamamali now, Walamali now. Our old people, they nurture us, they guide us, they protect us. Mamba Wada Naminyago, Wuragabinya Wada Darego, winning Galago Baligo. Looking to see, listening to hear, and learning to understand. Nyani Injamali, Nurabangila Balanin, Wallawin Gullinga, Bangba. Yanin Gingo Nyani Ma Wang Yao Biligi Gila Yaman Bilgiri Yani Marambo Bagarigan Yanin Gingo. We respect country, we look after country so it is healthy for our children, and we teach and we learn what is right for all on country. Wirai Nyang, Wirai Mayan, no language, no people, Wallawin Mayan, Wallawin Nurambango. Healthy people, healthy country. Muram Maginya Yinjamara, Muramuru Wirambira Nurambango. Living a respectful way of life. Cares for country, Mayan, and people. Injamara Marandogobo, Giragobo, Yandogobo. Respect is taking responsibility for the now, the past, the present, and the future. Our welcome to country is always made in the spirit of peace, harmony, and reconciliation for all people of modern Australia. And our main aim as local custodians is to establish an atmosphere of mutual respect through the acknowledgement of our ancestors and the recognition of our right to declare our special place in the pre and post history of the Canberra region. The name Canberra is derived from the name of our people and country right here, the Nyamberi, Canberra, Canberra. And we've cared for Mother Earth since the dawn of time, and evidence of our occupation, our sovereignty, can be seen everywhere throughout the land. Our signature is in the land, not just our DNA. And taking care of country is important to us. The law of the land talks about Yinjamal Gijul Main Galang Bul, Yando Main Galang Dul. Give respect and honour to all people from all parts of the country. And then people will respect you. Yinjamara, Burudurai, Wirambira, Muranwaginya, respect everything living and growing. With that, Maragaladal, Walan Maya, Mayangalang, we hold fast to each other. We empower the people. Walan Gudmala, Mara Gurai, we be brave, we make change. Diriyawana, Murawara, Nawan Bera, we get up, we stand up, and we show up. In terms of the good acceptance words, we gifted 60,000 years of our identity, Niawai Gunung Gijol. The action, Mara. Mara is your hand in language. Mara is two hands to create, to make. Then the focus, Nina, this or here, and the Wayana, the transformation. Our gift last year around love, respect, safety, belonging, morals, values, sacrifice, security, the caring and the sharing and the nurturing and sheltering, that was part of our gift. If you may not realise, part of the yes referendum. It was rejected. And we continue to experience rejection since 1788 in our own country. And we talk about the dispossession and the intergenerational trauma from dispossession that continues today. We seen it last year, but we never give up. We continue to fight for our human rights. We continue to fight for justice, respect, and recognition. And we will never stop doing that. And we'll never stop giving and sharing in this country with everyone. So we thank the 6.2 million people who supported our right to be recognised in the Whitefellow Common Law book, which we're still not. So we have a long way to go in this country. And as modern contemporary Australians here sitting, our old people never gave this country up. We never ceded sovereignty. Our land was stolen without consent or treaty, and these are matters yet to be resolved in this country. We still have a long way to go in this country. So with that, respect shapes us and lifts up the people. And respect creates people who care for each other. And respecting our creator and protector by army and our key totems, the crow and the eagle. Dr. Matilda Williams House. I'd like to acknowledge my mother, Dr. Matilda Williams House. Because of her, I can. Because of her, we can on country. And I'd like to acknowledge all the matriarchs in the room here today. Because of all the matriarchs, we know we can on country. And in the end, And in the end, when the dust has settled on all of our lives, all we get to take with us is our dignity and our integrity and the love and respect we have for our people, our family and country. So goe mbana nina nurumbango. Welcome to country. Thank you. We'll play a song. I think it's good to generally have a minute silence for all the people who, transformed. But I'm going to play a song in that honour, that minute honour on the Yidaki.
Thanks so much for being here again, Paul, sharing your culture and, as always, being a strong advocate for the Ngambri and Ngunnawal people and reminding us of what's important. Thank you to Paul. Another of our special guests today is the Assistant Minister for Health and Aged Care, Jed Carney. And Jed, whenever I see you, I think of those palliative care ninjas that looked after your mum. And also I think of your sister and your nephew who were well supported through their paediatric palliative care journey. Thank you so much for being here today, and I invite you to say a few words and share your thoughts. Surprise!
That was unexpected, but thank you. And it is a great honour to be here, not only because I'm totally fangirling Jean Kittson, but because you are all absolutely wonderful. And I do acknowledge that was a beautiful welcome to country from Paul. And I do acknowledge that we're on the land of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples and pay my respects to elders past and present. And you all know my story. I have had a wonderful experience with amazing palliative care practitioners who have made two very difficult circumstances in my family's life so much easier and memorable. They were really wonderful. But I do know, and I had a quick chat to Jean before, that that's not everybody's experience. And it may be that I'm incredibly lucky that I live in a very busy, well-resourced city. Melbourne, and if you live in a rural and regional area or even in the outer suburbs of a big city, that may not be the case. And so there's not a lot that I can tell you really about palliative care. You are the experts. I know the great work that you do. I know how important you are. I'm 100% committed to making it as good as we possibly can from a policymaker's perspective. And I acknowledge Nola here, my parliamentary colleague, and I think she would agree with, of course, Katrina, the amazing Katrina, who is just absolute champions for this cause in this house. We are committed to that, but it is not always easy, particularly when you have to look at the differences that exist right across the country and the different approaches we need to take in areas like rural and regional. And I know that Jean had a personal experience with that. So thank you for having me here today. It is incredibly important to have you in the house. You do amazing work. Palliative Care Australia are absolutely wonderful. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for keeping your presence here. I keep telling you, nothing more powerful than having you in the house and banging on our doors. And I'm sure Katrina and Nola would agree with me. So congratulations on today. Keep coming, keep talking about it, keep letting everybody know the absolute importance of what you do and why you do it. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Minister. Forgive me for taking you by surprise, but look, absolutely. Today's event is hosted in partnership with our parliamentary friends of Palliative Care and is likely to be our last event before the next election. Our co-conveners have skin in the game, and their support for us and the community we represent comes with their own personal experience. Where others are fearful of stepping into a space that talks about dying and death, our co-conveners bound in and help their communities and their colleagues see value in embracing this part of life and advocating for better access to palliative care within their party rooms. Nola Marino has been the Liberal member for Forest in WA since 2007, and Labor's Katrina Billick has been a Senator for Tasmania also since 2007. Both have called time on their 17-year career in the House. To offer her thanks for their contribution, for Katrina and Nola's contribution, please welcome the CEO of Palliative Care Australia, Camilla Rowland.
Thanks, Ian. I realise it's a little bit squeezy in here, so people just be aware that you don't knock anything over as you come through. Given that we only have the Assistant Minister here for a few more minutes, I actually thought it might be great, first of all, to do a photo opportunity up here on the stage in front of the banners with Nola and Katrina and Jean and the Minister and myself, if that's okay. We might start off that way, and then we'll get Katrina and Nola to stay up here.
Is the bells going to ring actually?
Yeah. Yes. Completely aware. Come on, Jean in the middle.
Oh,
Next to the minister. Yes. You can handle the middle. You're a star.
So we've got it right. I think we've got it right. You're looking fabulous. Okay, can we do it with me, please? And with them.
Thank you. And here, just one more.
One more.
Thank you.
Well, I used to be the chief whip.
Nola, you need to stay.
Right, we're staying. Okay, very good.
So Nola and Katrina have been our co-conveners. I think we worked out for over 15 years of Palliative Care Australia's work, and boy, are they dynamos. We have some flowers here for you, just as a small token of our thanks, and Gretchen will present those to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
pleasure.
Thank
And
you.
you've still got me for 6 months.
That's right. We've got them for a little while longer. Can I just say, in just over 3.5 years that I've been CEO, these two women have been amazing. They are movers and shakers. And if I need to get a meeting with someone, they'll say, I'm going to contact their office and I'll get you in there and get a meeting, because we know what a busy period this has been in government. And, you know, they're quiet influences behind the background, although Nola and Katrina may not describe themselves as being quiet. But without them, and we're hoping...
No one knows.
No. And we are hoping that when they do leave, that they have picked two fantastic conveners to replace them, and in the next Parliament that we have just as great an opportunity and an experience that we've had. So thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. So on that note, this is why we're here. Why we're here is to talk about our federal election campaign, which will also be our budget submission. So on your chairs, you will have found a 2-pager. It's always good to do a 2-pager because the other document's 19 pages with all the evidence and the referencing behind it. But this 2-pager really talks about what our needs are in Australia right now. And as Katrina and Nola and I have talked about a number of times, we have an ageing population in Australia and a health and aged care system that needs to be able to keep up with that demand and that need. So you'll see on there that we know that right now, every day, 400 people die from a life-limiting or terminal illness. 400 people in Australia every day. And yet less than 3 in 5 people can access specialist palliative care. So what happens to those people? They end up in emergency, or they end up in other wards in hospitals, or they might be at home or in an aged care facility having untreated symptoms and untreated pain management and looking after their social and emotional needs. And one of the things that I'm always struck by when Paul House comes and does a welcome to country for us is how spiritual his welcome is. And that spiritual and social and emotional side is just so critical also to that care philosophy of palliative care. It's not just about the doctors and nurses. They are critical, but it's a holistic method of end-of-life care. So with that in mind, and thinking about all the reforms that have been in place, we have 4 major asks, and in no particular order, they're all just as critical. And today you'll hear the panel and others reflect on what do those asks actually mean. So palliative care and primary care. We just met with a rural MP's advisor this morning who was, there's over 60 pieces of legislation getting passed this week. So people are zooming in and out, quick hello, and then the advisor stepped in. But we know in his region that there's very few GPs, and those GPs can't make home visits for people who are at end of life, which is really critical. And it's a well-populated rural region in New South Wales. And so what we want to make sure in areas like him, that GPs can have items and can have time to actually be remunerated for the work that they do. So have a look at those supplementary payments, the quarterly payments to primary care practitioners, the expert working group to promote further advice to government, access to community-based palliative care actually saves money for the government. And we want to make sure that those GPs are integral in delivering community-based palliative care. The second one is about critical palliative care medicines. Some of you will have seen some of the media over the last year about pharmacists, GPs, specialists saying they cannot access the level of quality medicines they need, critical medicines. And I can see some nurses and doctors in the audiences absolutely nodding, saying, we're actually not going to be in a crisis. We are in a crisis. So we have started working with Minister Butler's office, who may pop in today, by the way, if he's got time amongst all the other events. But we know that working with the government and working with the Minister's office is absolutely critical to resolving this issue. And we have, at this stage, we have 6 national health peaks supporting us in this call to have the situation resolved. So to give you an example, right now, if a manufacturing company knows that they're going to run out of a critical medicine, they only need to give the government 6 months' notice. 6 months to be able to find a substitute medicine that is appropriate, that we can actually order in the right quantities and the right dosages that's actually going to address the problem. 6 months is not long enough. We need to make sure that we have a plan in place that's going to not just address this now, but into the future. And we have an 11-point plan. And that 11-point plan is in the 19-page document that we can send to you all. Palliative care and aged care. Fantastic about the aged care legislation going through. Very excited, but that is a key part of the reform, but there is much more to be done around the rules. We're saying at a minimum, all nursing and care staff in aged care need to be trained in basic palliative care. If 92%, and that's just top tip of the iceberg, if 92% of people who enter into aged care facilities could benefit from palliative care, and that's just in data collected, 92%, majority of those people will die within 2 years of entering an aged care facility, then they need access to staff who understand about planning for end-of-life care, who understand in the many months ahead the sorts of day-to-day activities and support those people will need, and so that they can have a good death. When we all get there one day, some of us sooner rather than later, we all want to be able to have great access to palliative care in aged care facilities and in home. So we need to ensure that in-home care providers also can deliver quality palliative care approach. Then finally, it's about support at home for people under 65. We all assume that if you're under 65 and you have a terminal illness or a life-limiting illness, that you can access the NDIS. Not the case. There are many, I can see people going, no, that's right. There are many situations where the old home and community care program used to step in and help people give that level of support they needed to be at home when you're under 65. We need to ensure that there is a program available, trial a program that complements the NDIS, complements my aged care for people under 65. And we have a number of items involved with that. So that's just a snapshot. We've sent this out to every single federal MP. We've also sent out the 19-page extravaganza, which details and references everything. And we have now embarked on a long plan of meeting with as many federal MPs and their advisors as possible over the next 2 months. That is on the basis that we think there may be an election called in March. So we're prepared. I want to thank all the federal MPs who've come today. I want to thank our senators and our ministers and the staff that have come from the department as well, and all our national stakeholders, because I see in the audience we have some critical national stakeholders who've attended today: Pain Australia, National Rural Health Alliance, Motor Neurone Disease Australia, Council on the Ageing, just to name a few, who are in support of making sure that these reforms in health and aged care go through. So thank you.
Thanks, boss. And there are also printed copies of our 19-page platform here for you to take away today as well. To raise awareness and twist some arms around the need for better access to palliative care is a face and voice many Australians will recognise, the one and only Jean Kittson. While you might know Jean best for swinging from the rafters of the big gig in pink leotards, what you may not know is that for the last 10 years at least, Jean has been the carer for her beloved mum and dad, Elaine and Roy. Both lived with relative independence in their own home within a retirement village until they needed a short stint in residential aged care. Part of a chain of events that led to their death earlier this year, Elaine, 99, and Roy, 96. We'll chat with Jean in just a moment, but first a short video for you to get a sense of the experience that Jean and her family have had.
I would say a good death is a death where the family doesn't have to recover from feelings of guilt, inadequacy, not doing the right thing, and feeling like their loved ones could have had more done for them if they'd had the right care. My own experience was incredibly frustrating with my parents. Elaine and Roy were remarkable people. They gave me my sense of humour. My dad was a mechanic and a racing car driver, and he was a DIY guy. And my mother was an incredibly strong woman who her entire life has lived by equality for women. When they died, they were 99 and 96. Mum was 99, Dad was 96. They were in and out of hospital many times in the last year, and I just didn't seem to be able to access the people that I knew were there and I knew would make our lives so much better. Because we couldn't get enough support at home, they ended up going into respite for 2 weeks in residential aged care. And when Mum said she wanted to die because of a whole sequence of events that happened when she was in respite, they called an ambulance. They didn't even let her die there. She's in a big double room, all her family around. There's a bed beside her because Dad had died 3 weeks beforehand. There's a bed beside her. We could have all been with her in a comfortable room, making our cups of tea, and they said, "You have to call an ambulance. We don't provide that end of life for someone." And then we had to die in hospital, in the emergency, and then in a ward because there were no palliative care beds. We get put into a curtained area and, well, if she wants to die, that means she doesn't have any treatment. It boggles the mind that in a place where most people are going to end up dying, that there's not the right skills available to help them do that in the best possible way. So we're there for over 24 hours in this curtained area where you don't want to be talking about end of life because someone's next door with a broken leg and they're freaking out, or something else is happening and they don't want someone behind the curtain going, "So Mum, we love you, we're sorry to say goodbye." Like you feel really exposed. You can't be yourself. You can't have a proper end of life experience. We were in a state of high tension about what we weren't doing. And we'd been through days of this so-called terminal agitation that we thought maybe came with death. Maybe that was normal and we just had to suck it up and try and deal with Mum's physical grasping, sitting up, us pressing the button, bring more drugs, like, what do we know? We didn't know anything. And I can tell you exactly how palliative care would have changed my mother's dying, because the palliative care specialist came down after about 4 days to see how we were. This is what she saw straight away. Your mum hasn't got a catheter. She needs catheterizing. And after Mum was catheterized, she was peaceful. She died about an hour later, just peacefully. All that suffering was taken away by one specialist walking into the room and saying she needs to be catheterized. It's very distressing to live with when you think you could have done better yourself. That's the worst part. That you fell at the last hurdle. And especially being a carer for like 10 years and trying to put everything in place to help our elders reach safe harbour at the end of their lives, with as much pleasure and pain-free as possible, to feel like right at the end you just have completely let them down. I blame myself that I didn't go up to the palliative care ward and say, could you come down and just have a quick look at Mum and tell us what we're doing? We can't even get her dentures out. Because of the experience my sister and I had with my mother at the end of her life, Mum's death is so full of trauma for us both. We cannot call ourselves a compassionate community when people are dying alone without the proper care they need, and where families are struggling with their loved ones at the end of life. If you support better access to palliative care, let's make some noise. Go to Palliative Care Australia and share your story. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jean Kittson.
Sorry, thank you. It was pretty. I thought I knew everything, of course. I'd even written a book about it. Just all the things I thought we all needed to know to help, and then it all fell apart, and then you just left. The whole story becomes one of just trauma instead of. I can't even remember the good things. I'm sure, but this is my therapy. Help me, Ian.
Welcome to the couch, Jean. Welcome to the couch. Jean, what strikes me from your story and what you just said there, in the video you say, I blame myself. I should have gone upstairs. But what strikes me from your story is the system let you down. The system shouldn't need you going upstairs. Is that how it feels?
Well, no, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like that I thought all we had to do was be educated, that we just needed to know what was around, the services were around, and then we just needed to access them. But I didn't realize that when at the end of life, there's so many things going on, so many emotions that you sort of don't think in the normal way. You actually need someone on the outside to remind you what your choices are, if you've got choices. So, and so I didn't actually realize just how I still blame myself, because I can't quite believe that I just didn't take that moment. You get on it like you're in this system, everybody's system. The residential aged care had their protocols, the hospital had their protocols. You're in the system that you just are going along with, and you're just relying on people to steer you in the right direction. So I did take my hands off the wheel. Maybe they were pulled off, maybe, I don't know. I still don't really know what happened, but I know now how much we need support, the right sort of, just someone to say, let's go and talk about this. what it might look like, and what your choices are. Just anyone to take you out of the room, let go of your mother's hand, come out here, have a cup of tea, and think about it, you know.
You talk about that ability to be able to think clear and the opportunity to be able to think clearer in that sort of fog of grief and trauma that you're going through in that situation. This is all still really new and fresh to you. Your mum and dad died earlier this year. Where's your head and heart at as you sort of process this? Where's your head and heart at? How are you feeling? You've seen the video. There's big campaigns about to launch.
Yeah.
How are you feeling with your own sort of grief journey?
Oh, well, I haven't even gone into grief because I'm actually still in trauma. I haven't. That's what I really resent. And I know that when I see the video, it sounds like I'm talking about me all the time, but it's all about how what mum was happening to mum and our response to that and how we felt. So I say that family is left with trauma, then the trauma becomes a whole story. And it takes so long for that to dissipate. Then you know, my sister lives quite a distance away, but at Christmas she's coming down with the whole family together again since the funerals, because we want to have a chance just to sort of grieve and not be just dealing with our shock. Even my sister, who works in the NDIS, so you know, she's a capable, competent person. She was traumatized by it all as well. So that journey, that grief journey, hasn't really started. And anyone who can have a sense of grieving and sit with their grief, as they say, sit with their grief and loss in that without trauma is that's pretty good. You're halfway to, you know, being reconciled with losing someone that you love. Yeah.
Is part of your shock also around what wasn't available to you, the shock that your mum and dad are in residential aged care for respite, but residential aged care, the facility they were in, wasn't necessarily equipped to deal with their end-of-life experience. Is that part of your shock?
I'm so shocked. There's 70 beds. There was one GP. They couldn't bring their own GP in. They were only in there for 2 weeks, mum and dad, and they both died in there. And I blame the protocols of the residential aged care. 70 beds. Everyone's going to die in there when you go to residential aged care. I was going to say, if you, apart from respite, but now I'm not so sure. But everyone in residential aged care is going to die in there. So why isn't there the proper support? Now, this was Easter. So maybe the GP wasn't around and there was no backup medical attention. They could, you know, so it is shocking that in a place where everyone goes really at the end of their lives, and most people, I've talked to a lot of people who run residential aged care, and most people go in there at the end of their lives. I think the average is maybe 2 years, but there's a lot of people who go right at the end, that there wouldn't be the proper skills in there to deal with people's end of life and the family. There just wasn't. And that's really shocking to me. And there were RNs, and the RNs weren't even allowed to give my mum a Panadol if it wasn't chartered, because it wasn't chartered. They couldn't even give her a Nurofen. So although there are RNs, if they haven't been given the authority in these residential aged cares to actually do their work, then what's the point? They could only do whatever the GP had said, and he wasn't there. So
residential aged care is a tough gig, and certainly the actions within our election platform are designed to support those working in residential aged care and empower them to deliver the sort of palliative care we want them to. You have experienced how the system should work. Your mum and dad lived relatively independently for 10 years in their retirement village. You engineered a team of ninjas around them
I love the word ninjas.
to come in and look after them.
That's right.
And while the video speaks to your mum's experience, let's talk about your dad's positive experience with palliative care. He lived with respiratory troubles for many years, but palliative care played a role for him that gave him comfort.
Yes, that's right. So mum and dad were still living independently right to the end. They had a big team because, you know, we know that it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to make sure our elders reach safe harbor at the end of their lives as comfortable as possible, and their families. So I knew dad was having trouble breathing, and he would have these panic attacks, and then he'd press a button, the ambulance would come. In the retirement village, you press a button, the ambulance, the AINs come in, they go, yeah, you know, you're not so well. The ambulance arrives really quickly. So that was always a great service in the retirement village attached to their residential aged care. But dad was getting more and more breathlessness and having trouble managing. And so I eventually, it took a little while. So I don't know why, even though I'm patron of Palliative Care Nurses Australia, very humbly, it took me a while to actually access palliative care because there's a lot of gatekeepers. I think palliative care nurses and specialists are treasured, so you're put somewhere where it's hard to reach. Finally got a community palliative care nurse to come round, and she told dad just a couple of tips, like gave him a little hand fan, sleep with the fan on, then suggested Ordine, which Camilla was talking about, Ordine. It took me 5 pharmacies to visit before I found Ordine. It was over $100 a bottle, which I didn't tell dad and mum about. Don't spend that money on us. So I bought it, but it was only had a month left on its expiry date. And I thought, anyway, so he had syringes of Ordine, which he didn't use because he knew it was morphine and he thought I was just knocking him off, I think. But with the fan on, and just knowing that the Ordine was there to relax him and open his lungs, which it does really effectively, and even the GP came and gave it all the tick of approval for them. He never had to call the ambulance again, except for one time because mum woke up. Can I tell this story? Because mum woke up and she said, Roy, even though she's legally blind, Roy, there's a spider behind our bed. You know, there's this big spider running everywhere. And he goes, all right. And mum had macular degeneration. Dad had macular dystrophy, so he couldn't see very well, but he went out to the kitchen and got what he thought was a bug spray and started spraying it all over the wall, but it was actually oven cleaner. He sprayed oven cleaner, and then they're both choking and they have to cook the butter, and then the ambos, you know, the paramedics came and they clear it all out and they went back to bed. But yeah, but apart from that, having Louise call in every 3 weeks or just ring up and just keep an eye on them was phenomenally changed his whole experience, their life. Yeah, it really did.
Let's keep talking about your mum and dad in better times. We didn't have the opportunity to do their lives justice in the short video, but let's learn a bit more about Elaine and Roy. Roy was a racing car driver.
Yes, he was. I mean, can you imagine? I've just been reading articles recently about writing your own eulogy, because the worst thing that I ever had to do was write a speech about mum and dad at their funerals, and I think it was the worst speech I've ever given. And you can't do justice to people's lives. You can't really express who they were in a few minutes. It's way too complicated, and it's just so much detail. Look, I'm even having trouble now. So, but the grandchildren, the thing about mum and dad living so long with so much care and having their every single symptom of whatever they were living with, all their comorbidities treated, and that was it. They had a really long time with their grandchildren, and the grandchildren's speeches at the funeral were absolutely remarkable. And the grandchildren weren't, you know, they weren't allowed in the room in the hospital, so they weren't there when mum died, and they didn't have to have that trauma, thank goodness. One was, but and he's pretty good. But dad was a racing car driver for my fourth birthday. He built his own racing car, and for my 4th birthday, he took everyone on his knee round the block in the racing car, going at about 200 miles an hour. All these little, like, 4-year-old kids. Those were the days, really.
And what about your mum, Elaine? She sounds like one of Australia's original feminists.
Oh, yeah, she is. She calls herself I'm a full-time feminist. She was an original member of the WEL, which is a women's electoral lobby. She went along to the first meeting they had in Melbourne because she said there's no women in Parliament. And she went from a small country town where she got ridiculed. She went with one other woman who is a nurse. And Mum was working at the doctor's she was a secretary, they used to call it in those days, admin. And she and the nurse went along to the first WEL meeting, Women's Electoral Lobby meeting in Melbourne. She was absolutely, like we were all equal in our house. And luckily Dad was although he's a mechanic and a racing car driver, he liked cooking and nurturing and painting. And, he had that side to him. So, yeah, she was a great role model.
Is you being a part of this campaign part of, I guess, your healing process, doing honour to their death in a way?
Oh, well, I don't know whether I'm making up for letting them down, but my main thing has always been that to just share information that other people might need, and in a way that's really accessible and, in a sort of layman's terms, I guess, just talking to people. I do a lot of, after my book on caring for our elders, I do a lot of care expos and things like that, and just talk to people. And the last year, all the care expos I've been doing around Australia, I've been mainly talking to people about palliative care and talking about, like the plans and things that you need to ask. And like even in my book, I put, before you choose residential aged care, there are 120 questions you need to ask before you choose residential aged care. And at first, and a CEO of residential aged care gave me these questions. And at first I said, look, I don't want to buy the place. I just want a bed, But when you look through the questions, you'd want them all answered. And 12 of those questions are about the palliative care they provide. But I didn't ask any of those questions because this was attached to Mum and Dad's retirement village and they're only in there for 2 weeks. But you need to ask all these questions because even if it just alerts the people you're asking to the fact that this is what your expectations are as a civilian, this is what we need. So I just want other people not to have to go through this, and to understand that even though you think you're equipped, and even though in my book I wrote how to be with a dying person, like it all falls apart when it's your mum or dad. Oh, you just swab out the mouth, like you just get the dentures out. Couldn't you saw that on? It's just a totally different experience, and really nothing can prepare you for it. And you just need someone to hold your hand now and then, just pop in, just pop in. That's what you need.
It all falls apart when you don't have the support, when it doesn't rest. Yeah, when it doesn't rest with family and friends.
No, it's all theoretical, and then it can all fall apart, and then you're still in a place of a medical expertise, but we know hospitals aren't set up to help people die. They're set up for acute illnesses. So I know it's the wrong place to die, but palliative care beds, a lot of people don't want to die alone, so they want to be in hospital with some really good help. So there's palliative care beds, which are fantastic, but there's only a handful, and they're always full.
I can't help but think someone in the audience wants to ask a question of Jean while we've got her here. So if there's anyone in the audience who does want to ask a question, we've got a mic up the front here. And if one of my PCA comrades can perhaps pass the mic around, that would be great. But we've got a little bit of time for one or two questions from the audience. Jean, what sort of a response have you had from the aged care provider, the health system? Has someone said sorry? Has someone acknowledged what went wrong here?
Oh, well, surprisingly, people, even in residential aged care, they don't want to talk about death, and they don't want to talk about dying. And I found it real, and they don't talk to each other about it. So when my dad died, he had a catastrophic gastrointestinal something happened. Their protocol was not for Dad to press a buzzer and they ring an ambulance. Their protocol was to ring family and ask them whether he should. I said, if he's asking, please. Anyway, it was very, very late. Anyway, they took him off to hospital. They didn't wake my mother. My mother is stone deaf and blind. They didn't tell her he'd gone. He died a few hours later, and before I got to the hospital. And then I went in, I sat with Dad for a while and things like that. And then I went in to see Mum really early in the morning. She was already awake. She was fully dressed. And she said, Jean, I don't know whether your father is. I can hear his voice in the corridor. I said, he's died. And then the care workers, the people down probably the bottom of the pecking order in residential aged care, they hadn't been told. No one had been told where he'd gone. No one had been told he died. The next shift didn't know. No one. I had to tell everyone. Like there was no communication. And then management. We've got to fly.
No, this dirty flyer.
Fly. Get off us. The management never got a message from management, condolence. Like it was obviously a highly dysfunctional place. And my heart went out to the staff because they couldn't, and I know there's excellent residential aged care, but I know the majority of the population are frightened of them. They don't want to go because they're frightened, and they still are. And that has to change. We can't have our elders, and Mum needed 24/7 care. That's why they went in. So we can't have them going in needing that care that we couldn't provide at home, but being frightened something would happen. As it turned out, it did. So, but you know, this is really, as I said, there are really good places that have low staff turnovers, have high quality care, are always improving their communication between the whole team, everyone who works in residential aged care are talking to each other. So yeah, there are good places, but a lot needs to be done still.
And certainly our platform looks to create more good places so that people have more good experiences. We have time for one or two questions. A question over here.
Jean, I want you to know you're not to blame. And I've been a nurse for a very long time, and I can tell you right now, it is that discipline that let you down. The nurses should have been able to help you with mouth care. They would have been able to notice that your mum had urinary retention, and they would have been able to put a catheter. What I think we need to add to the list is that every single registered nurse and medical officer in their training actually receive some practical palliative care education. 2 lectures at ANU for a junior doctor does not cut it.
Yeah.
And I cannot say that. I am part of a program that is about educating the healthcare workforce. And every day I meet healthcare professionals and clinicians and care workers, and it hurts me of how little they know about death and dying. So, Jean, please put that away. I promise you it is my discipline and my profession that let you down. And I'm so, so, so sorry.
But, you know, thank you very much. Thank you. That is very, very comforting. That's very comforting. But, you know, I keep telling myself I should have gone to the NUM. Should have gone to the nursing unit manager and said, help. But I shouldn't have had to. No. I mean, the nurses were young, and I don't think they had many people who were sent in there to die. It was a cancer ward, so they would be seeing a journey. They would have had a lot of demands on them, seeing people struggle with terminal illness, but not an elderly woman coming in just to die. I think just they weren't comfortable. No. Thank you. Thanks for those
Peter's got
words.
the microphone.
Hi, Peter.
Hi. What Rachel said, basically. I've worked in specialist palliative care too for the last 11 years, mainly in the aged care space. That shouldn't have happened. That absolutely shouldn't have happened. We've been working for so many years. I mean, I work on a day-to-day in aged care homes, but also people at policy level, Palliative Care Australia and others, we're doing our damnedest to change it.
Yeah, yes,
and yet
I know,
still these things happen. But we're not, it was not in vain. It was absolutely not in vain. We'll continue to try and improve things.
Yes, well, today is fantastic, and this new campaign, and when I was reading all the documents, it's just so thorough and so compelling. I mean, everyone's going to die and we're all going to be carers. And it's, you know, like, it's just an incredibly important part of our community to start embracing it, understanding it, and showing and really saying what our expectations are. To have that, you know, to have all those things going wrong at the end of life.
To have the strength to be able to talk about it so soon is extraordinary, and that's what policymakers need to listen to. Health professionals, we're just another voice. But,
well, I'm just cheap therapy today. Thank you very much. I feel a lot better. Yeah. That's right.
We've got two more questions, one from Joe and then one from Katrina.
And I thought I would just talk about some personal experiences, but actually quite positive ones, I hope. I'm from the Bega Valley, so from the coast, and in the last year I've only just come across Palliative Care Australia, and one friend who was in his mid-50s died about a year ago, and he had the most amazing palliative care at home from nurses in the Bega Valley, and another friend of mine who is currently at end of life, and she lives by herself. She's in her mid-late 60s, got a lot of bushwalking friends around her helping, but on a property by herself in rural and regional Australia, we're amazed that there are specialists flying down from Sydney to drive from, you know, an hour and a half to get to her, to spend a couple of hours with her, to go back for an hour and a half to get a plane back to Sydney. I'm not saying it's enough at all, but it's just a really positive thing that I've seen in regional Australia, which makes it really special. So keep doing it, because we're all going to die there at some stage.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks, Joe. Good to hear the stories, the good stories, as well as the sadder, tougher stories. Senator Katrina Billick.
Thank you. My mum died in February this year in a hospital, but it was quite a nice death, to be honest. She was 93. She was ready to go. And the nursing staff were great. But I'm one of 5 children. One of my siblings, older siblings, was she was just about paralysed by the thought that my mother was going to die at 93 years of age. And like, just kept making things a little bit more difficult than they needed to be. Part of the problem I find is we just don't talk about it. You know, when you're having a baby, there's all this preparation you do, and I just don't get why we don't do that for death as well. And that's the message I think we really need to get out, is that people prepare to have a baby and there's lots of celebrations and all. And I'm not saying people should go, Yahoo, Granny's dead or whatever, but they should.
Yeah.
They should be able to, we should be able to, in this day and age in our country, ensure that people get a dignified death.
Yeah.
And we just need to keep talking about it. So come to Tassie. You can start at my house and we'll do Tassie after next year and talk to people about it.
I'd be very happy to. Tassie, actually, Care to Serve in Tassie are a fantastic carers group. So you would know them. They're amazing. I've been doing some modules with them for carers, and they're extraordinary. I'll come anytime. But yeah, talking about it and accepting it, and well, my daughter's about to give birth, so we should have a nap. She's got a nap. Oh, it's now a fig. Oh, it's now a bunch of grapes. You know, I don't know. It's growing red blood cells. We could have a nap at the end of life. Oh, my red blood cells are not growing anymore. I don't know. Yeah, whatever. But my kidneys, that's right. I've only got 20%. That's okay. I can live with that. I think Dad lived with about 20% functioning kidneys for about 10 years. 10 years.
But as you say, it boggles the mind that we don't do this better, that we don't accept that when someone's 93, they are about to die.
Well, that's purely because your sister hadn't had those conversations and wasn't able to accept it, and she didn't want to talk about. Yeah, not to your sister. Well, that comes from fear too. So I think when we talk to our loved ones about death and dying, we sort of think we've got to remember that what they're fearful of is probably the start. What are you afraid of? Because that's what usually stops those conversations. Yeah.
Jean, thank you so much for being here today, sharing your story, sharing Elaine and Roy's story, lending your voice and your name to our campaign. I have no doubt we are going to make some change with this. It's a unique opportunity that you've given us. Thank you so much. We're not too far off seeing you in another series of Mother and Son. Do you still have the pink leotards of Candida?
Well, I still got them, but I wouldn't put them on even for Palliative Care Australia.
Not even for Palliative.
Not even for Palliative
But look at the
Care.
colours of the campaign, Jean. They speak to Candida.
That's right, all that pink. I know, that's true.
Thank you again for being here. It's a
Thank
real
you,
honour and a
Ian.
privilege. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
A
Jean
very
Kittson.
small contribution. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you again, Jean. To reflect on Jean's experience and the actions within our 2025 election platform, we've assembled a panel of experts, a panel of palliative care ninjas, who each come with their own personal experience. Dr. Peter Allcroft is a senior staff specialist at Southern Adelaide Palliative Care Services, based at Flinders Medical Centre in South Australia. He's also the Deputy Chair of Palliative Care Australia. Welcome, Peter. Dr. Paresh Dwada is a general practitioner, academic, educator and consultant. His clinical practice is focused on people with complex and chronic care needs, which incorporates aged care, disability care and palliative care. Thanks for being here today, Paresh. Nikki Johnson is a nurse practitioner with over 30 years of clinical practice, as well as extensive teaching, leadership and research experience. Nikki has won multiple awards, including an Order of Australia medal. Welcome, Nikki. Thank you for being here. Corey Ilam is the Deputy Chief Executive Officer of COTA Australia, with responsibilities for advocacy and government relations. He also leads COTA's policy work on aged care and retirement. Thanks for lending your voice, Corey. Thanks for being here. And Josh Fear, who is the National Policy Director for Palliative Care Australia and the Chief Architect of our 2025 federal election platform. Thanks for being here, Josh. Let's start with, I guess, some reflections on the story you've just heard, Jean's personal story, and I guess the issues you identify within a system that doesn't work as it should. Peter, starting with you, your response to Jean's experience, Jean's family's experience. What do you reflect on?
Thanks, Ian. It has been said, and said so eloquently, we are so sorry that that has happened to you and it has happened to others, that we have let you down. And I find it quite amazing that someone who's so intelligent, so articulate, that felt powerless to be able to approach people, to get help, to ask the question. And so we have let you down in that. But I think we let people down regularly because we fail to recognise that people are dying. And if we do recognise they are dying, we're recognising in the last day or two often in the acute care setting. But if we have recognised they're dying, we're failing to have that important discussion, to take the time to have that conversation, to be brave and sit down. And so part of that, we really need to empower, to teach our undergraduates, our juniors, our nurses, to be brave and to be able to have that important conversations. They get bandied around as difficult conversations, but they're only difficult if you don't have the confidence, the knowledge, the safety to have that. So again, we are sorry that that happened. We need to do better and we need to advocate strongly for all of the things that Palliative Care Australia is asking for.
Nikki, what about your reflections and how common do you think a story like Jean's is?
I too am really sad, and that I feel that our system let you down on multiple levels. I'm really distressed listening to what happened to you, and I'm distressed for not only what you went through, but I'm distressed because I see this so much. And we really need to do better. We need to do better for Peter, who came into hospital having 5 different cancers, no chemotherapy anymore. So he comes under a geriatrician into a ward that he knows nobody. They give him Narcan because he's sleeping. He's sleepy, so he's dying. But they give him Narcan to reverse all his pain medicines. And so he's awake and delirious and dying. I went and saw him and gave him back all his medications, and he died 12 hours later, comfortably. But without palliative care, that wouldn't have happened. We need to do better for Bruce, who died in the geriatric ward after he came in to hospital, delirious, broken hip. I went and saw him. I said, he's dying. He couldn't breathe. And the geriatrician said, he's not dying. I'm not going to do any of your recommendations. And it took sledgehammer-like advocacy from the palliative care team to actually get treatment for him, and he died 11 days later. We need to do so much better.
Thanks, Nikki. Corey, the Aged Care Act is now law. It's a significant achievement of this sitting of Parliament, and the Act makes it clear that people entering aged care should expect to be able to access palliative care. And our election platform looks to make that a reality and build the actions around the ambitions of the Aged Care Act. Give us a sense of the importance of the Aged Care Act and its role in embedding palliative care into aged care services.
I think first thing I'd say is we need to reframe the language. A bit technical for those of you in the room who like this. Chapter 24, Section 2B. An individual has the right to equitable access to palliative care and end-of-life care when required. From the 1st of July 25, there is a right to access palliative care and end-of-life care. It's amazing it doesn't exist today. It's amazing we've had to have a Royal Commission, 6 years of fighting, multiple inquiries to have a simple, basic right to access the palliative care that we need. It's all very nice to have rights on paper, but as you'll see from the palliative care election platform, it's now about how do we implement that. And I do think it's fair to say that talking about dying is hard. Okay, we have this conversation all the time with families who ring in, whether it be at the how do I help my mum over the next 12 months of life palliative care, whether it be I'm at that last 3, 6, 12, 16 weeks. I think we're going to figure it out in home support. What's the end of life stage that we're defining it as, or whether it be somebody wanting to access dying with dignity. It's really confronting. And we see this at CODA all the time because it's not just about dying. You spend all of your life learning to save, for example, and then in retirement, you learn how to spend. You spend all of your life learning how to live, but then you find it really confronting to have a conversation about how to die. As people, as family members, we find that confronting. So if you then get a compassionate care staff in aged care, they're going to find it confronting because they're finding an emotional bond with the people they're caring for. So 15,115 people we want trained over 3 years, I think, according to the platform. I think we're going to need more than that because we're going to have 25,000 people being supported each and every year in home support to be able to die where they choose to, which is often in their home. We need to start getting towards a place where we mandate, like dementia care, palliative care training for every single person who works in aged care.
Josh, I'm keen to tease out some of the other actions in our platform that relate to aged care. And I think the recent National Workforce Survey that PCA conducted earlier this year, 1,400 respondents, and some of the responses and the results from that are quite telling. The majority of aged care workers, 56% of aged care workers that responded to our survey, did not think the delivery of quality palliative care had improved in aged care services, in the aged care services where they work in the last 1 or 2 years. 1 in 8 of those aged care workers believe that the delivery of quality palliative care had actually deteriorated in the last 1 to 2 years. Give us a sense of some of the actions in the platform that go to addressing that.
Thanks, Ian. Hi, everyone. Well, we know that many. Sorry, let me just check the actions that you're talking about. We know that yes, we know that there's. Sorry, I've just had a brain explosion here.
You're right, mate. Certainly the training initiatives, upskilling and training the aged care workforce is significant. And as Jean has said, it boggles the mind that these people don't have that a lot of these people, I shouldn't say all of these people, that these staff working in such a critical environment at the end of life don't have these skills. That's going to make a significant difference.
Indeed. And sorry, I've recaptured where I was at. Yeah. So look, the Royal Commission told us that palliative care needs to be core business in aged care. We all agree that that's the case. We've all the panelists, everyone that's spoken today agrees that's what we're hoping for. And yet we don't know whether we're getting any better. And in fact, some of the markers that we've collected and some of the public data is suggesting that we may in fact be getting worse. There's so much reform happening at the moment. There's 1,000,001 priorities that we're asking providers to pay attention to. What Palliative Care Australia is calling for, therefore, is a new 2-yearly independent report on how we're doing. Are we getting better? What are the key metrics that we can use to assess whether access to palliative care and aged care is improving or getting worse? Or are the anecdotes that we're hearing actually wrong? Is it a good news story? So we think that will go a long way as long as it's independent.
Thanks, Josh. Paresh, picking up, I guess, one of the pillars of our election platform around better access to palliative care in the primary care setting, your home ground, and again referring to our National Workforce Survey, which highlighted growing demand for palliative care within the primary care sector. 72% of respondents said that there had been an increase in demand in the last 12 months, but only 11% of your colleagues working in the primary health sector agreed that primary care was adequately funded to deliver palliative care. You live this. Give us a sense of the blocks in delivering palliative care in that primary care sector, and I guess particularly the point around remuneration to deliver palliative care in the primary care sector.
Thank you. If I may, just for a moment, I think, Jean, your story validated something for me and my purpose around why I do palliative care. And that is that not only does it make a difference to the person you're caring for, but the whole family. And that positive impact when there's a good death stays for a long time. So I think when we're thinking about the return on investment, a good death actually treats a number of people. I think the other therapeutic agent we haven't really talked about is time and relational aspects. In my experience of providing good primary care, I think, to the patients I look after, the thing I hear time and time after around what they value is the time I spend in the conversations I have with them. Actually, the technical bit, the prescribing the medications, is all relatively simple. If the relation is there, if the conversations happen, if the time's been spent, if you've got different siblings, all with different agendas, getting everyone on the same page takes time. Our system in primary care wouldn't allow me to get a rebate if I spoke to your sister, for example. That's just not rebatable. Up until recently, there's only, the maximum time for consultation was 40 minutes. For GPs, it's now increased to 60 minutes, but not for nurse practitioners yet. So I think rewarding and incentivizing time to care for people with palliative care needs, perhaps in the same way we incentivize procedural work, might be a game changer.
The platform speaks about a new quarterly payment for primary care practices for each of their palliative patients to recognise the costs of delivering palliative care within that primary care setting. But it also talks about supplement payments for home visits, which goes to what you were just talking about, I think. Give us a sense of home visits, why they're important, and perhaps why they're not accessible at the moment.
So, look, I think as we have a growing population with a growing need for people to want to stay at home for as long as possible, even if it isn't for the end of life. We do have rebates which do provide home visits, and there's an uplift to those rebates. The problem is the opportunity cost for a general practitioner of traveling out, seeing a patient in their own home. Most of the time, I think many GPs tend to bulk bill those sorts of visits as well, compared to the same hours, hour and a half in a practice might generate revenue from seeing 6, 7 different patients. So there's an opportunity cost and a differential here. And therefore, incentivizing home visits, again, recognizing the value of the work and the therapy and the time spent in visiting people in their own homes and equating it to, 6 quick consults in a clinic would be a game changer. So I think that's one thing. Perhaps just talking about the quarterly payment. Again, my kind of feeling is palliative care isn't the sort of care you want to incentivize through a fee-for-service system. It needs a different platform, a different mode of paying. And so the quarterly payment is a different mode of paying. Perhaps that would start to support conversations we can have with relatives, with family members. So I think that's an important part of the formula.
Josh, coming back to you, it strikes me from what Paresh has said that it's really important that if people are to stay at home and receive palliative care at home, we need to engage the primary care sector. And indeed, a significant win out of the last budget was an announcement from the Health Minister that people in the last 3 months of their life would receive $25,000 for palliative care at home. But unless we engage the primary care sector, that sort of care just isn't going to be available.
Absolutely. So we're setting up a system where multiple systems need to work in parallel, and if one of them fails, then the other one's going to fall down as well. And so if there are, the number of people over 85 in the next 20 years is going to triple. That's a lot of folks who are going to need these services, and they don't exist at the moment. So in addition to the aged care investment, that new $25,000 over 3 months, which is absolutely welcome, and it's new money. We haven't had those resources. It's fantastic. We need to make sure we're providing primary care services with the wherewithal to provide the clinical care at the same time.
Thanks, Josh. Well said. Nikki, one of the key pillars of our election platform is providing better access to palliative care for people under 65. These are people who have disabilities as a result of their terminal illness but can't access the NDIS. Nikki, symptom and pain control are one thing and central to what palliative care offers. And PCA estimates there are at least 5,000 people at the moment under 65 living with a disability as a result of their terminal illness. These people aren't eligible for the NDIS, as I say, and they miss out on day-to-day functional living supports. Give us a sense of what we're talking about when we talk about day-to-day functional living supports and how important those services are to someone's well-being.
I'll firstly talk about someone with a primary brain tumour. This often happens when people are young. They have very high level of disability, meaning they need help eating, dressing, washing, cooking meals, moving, getting to the toilet. They need help with every single part of their daily living. They're also at the same time having quite intense symptoms of maybe intense pain. They may be on high doses of dexamethasone to help with that, and then that comes with side effects, so that can contribute them to losing their mobility in their legs. They're often being at home alone with that kind of brain tumour actually isn't an option. So unless you have carers, family there 24 hours a day who end up giving injectable medicines, end up being the nurse, the social worker, everything. There's so much put on those carers, and it often fails. Of course it's going to fail. That's just too hard. Sometimes you don't even have enough sheets. The washing machine won't work fast enough. So just those practicalities. So what we do see is that group of people end up in residential aged care early, if that's a possibility. And that's not a great environment for someone who's maybe having seizures. They've got very high palliative care needs. So, seizure management, pain, very high level of need, and they end up in somewhere where we're not even recognizing that they're dying sometimes. So that's that kind of picture. That is a group we need to really help and talk about. Another group is actually people who are on the NDIS, who Presh and I cared for a lovely Ngunnawal elder in her own home. We were able to do that under a homebound care arrangement package that Next Practice has. We went and saw her. She was on the NDIS. She had caseworkers. She had respiratory failure, cardiac failure, brain failure. Her whole body was failing. She didn't want to go to hospital. She was injecting IV drugs, massive trauma history, and her house wasn't deemed safe for palliative care to go in. So what that meant is they didn't have access to specialist palliative care. NDIS workers didn't have any knowledge of palliative care, so she, against her will, was transferred to hospital to die. That's just another example.
Josh, these are the sort of stories that I know have inspired your work in this space over the last 12 to 18 months. This has been an issue that the people in this place have known about for some time, but haven't been able to quite crack. But our platform goes some way in trying to address this issue and provide the functional day-to-day living supports for these 5,000 people currently in this position.
Yeah, look, this group, these are people who are under 65, who have a terminal condition that has caused or exacerbated disabilities. They can remain at home as long as they receive the right support, which they're not. This group is in the middle of a funding fight between the states and the Commonwealth. That is the reason this is happening. If they're over 65, this problem would not be occurring. Every single action in Palliative Care Australia's election platform is something the Australian government can do. So don't let a politician tell you that palliative care is an issue for the states, because these are all things the Commonwealth can do. That's why we're here in this building today.
Thanks, Josh. Peter, a range of well-known and effective palliative care medicines have not been available now for almost 2 years. Again, it's an issue that government have been well aware of and seemingly struggling to address. PCA is presenting an 11-point plan to address the medicine shortages crisis. How have you seen this play out on your wards in Adelaide with patients and the health professionals, the health community that you're a part of? How have you seen this medicine shortages crisis play out for the people in your circles?
Thanks. And probably the biggest problem and concern is not so much the acute care hospital and the wards, but it is in the community. We try to be proactive. We try to anticipate what will be the issues, what will we need to provide, but we run a 7-day service and patients deteriorate on a Saturday afternoon. And if that's come without warning and we're trying to organise medications, we've got families running from one pharmacy to the next. I think it was 5 pharmacies to get a bottle of Ordine. And then you might be able to find this particular brand and this particular formula, but it's a different strength. So we're at risk of drug errors because of under or overdosing. There is confusion with the different names. And that pharmacist has only got 3 days of stock. So I've ordered this medication, but next week I've got to see what else can I get my hands on. I did a home visit seeing a young family, and to make life a bit easier, I said, I'll drop into the pharmacy on the way back to the hospital so they can deliver the medicines. I queued up, and then when it got to the front of the queue, handed over the script. He knew that I was the prescriber as well. He said, I can't provide this. I don't have any stock. So we then had to go searching for pharmacies that did hold the stock. And I feel sorry because it is hard for the pharmacies, because if stuff's not being used regularly, it goes out of date. So there's a cost to them as well. So how do we really get a system that works well? So we try to anticipate, we try to do anticipatory prescribing, but sometimes we don't have that. So it the stress that families are under is difficult. And then the cost, because not every medication's on the pharmaceutical benefits scheme. And there are medications that we use that aren't on the PBS. So that is an additional cost, particularly if you're on a fixed income with a pension. That comes at considerable impost on you. So having available the essential medicines list, having all of those palliative care medications to be available free of charge for patients at the end of life would be a great win and help a lot of families.
Peter, you mentioned the PBS issue and one of the alternative medicines that's been available. A lot of them haven't been listed on the PBS, haven't been provided with that subsidy from the government. One of them in particular is 23 times more expensive. This particular medicine for 100 tablets costs someone $4,200 to receive because it's not on the PBS. What sort of difference would it make to have these medications made in Australia? One of the themes of this Parliament is a future made in Australia. What sort of a difference would it make to medicine shortages and the crisis we are in if these medicines were made here?
I think not just for medicines, but we saw in COVID that we were reliant on overseas imports, and if we could have a steady supply of medication that's been made in Australia and exported to other countries, that would be quite something. We are growing so much opium in Tasmania. Why can't we value add and make it? I know there are cost issues, there's compliance issues, but let's build a country that's not reliant on everyone else, but is self-sufficient. It would just give confidence. It's homegrown, it's Australian made, and I think we all take pride in that. And so I think it would just make a big difference to have a steady state, steady supply. You knew the quality, you knew where you were going to get it from, and it would make a big difference, I think.
Thank you, Peter. Please thank our panel of experts this afternoon. Thank you all so much for sharing your wisdom, sharing your experience with us and helping us tease out the 19 pages of our federal election platform. It's available for you now on the PCA website and printed copies are here for you today. The document we are introducing to you today is the result of consultation with PCA's 12 member organisations and the result of many conversations over the last 3 years with other health peaks, those working and volunteering in palliative care, and indeed those living and dying in palliative care. All agree that given our ageing population and growing levels of chronic disease, that our future is one of diminishing care unless we provide better access to palliative care. If you support better access to palliative care, we urge you to go to our website, sign the petition, share your story and show your support. For her final reflections on today, please welcome PCA CEO Camilla Rowland.
Thank you, Ian, for a fantastic MC effort today. You've done a great job, and to our panel, and especially to Jean, to bringing the story to life that covers so many issues. So what are all those issues in a succinct, summarised way? We don't have enough palliative care in Australia. We don't have enough investment in palliative care to meet the need of the future. We have the start of a system to meet the need for the future. As Josh said, you know, the number of people ageing is going to triple over the next 25 years, but we don't have a system that's ready. So we've gone some way with the New Aged Care Act, with some of the changes to GP remuneration, etc., to make some of those changes. But as Jean quite succinctly highlighted, if you can't access palliative care to begin with, or with people who are trained in palliative care to support you, then you miss out. So we talk about specialist palliative care only seeing people with complex needs, but the reality is we don't have enough other health professionals trained in palliative care to meet that need. So somewhere along the line, as many of our panellists were saying, and I see many people nodding, we need all the health profession trained in palliative care. We need the specialist palliative care services grow to actually help support, educate, advise other health professionals, and we need to ensure that there's enough investment to meet the needs of future older people and younger people who have terminal or life-limiting illnesses. We know that there are many other health peaks that stand with us in our asks, that see that this is a problem in their own disease specialities, whether it's dementia, motor neurone disease. This is a core issue for all of them. So we call on the Parliament to actually look at these 4 asks and make sure that there is investment to ensure that these 4 asks get through and we have budget investment in these. So I want to thank everyone for today, particularly for Jean for coming and sharing the story at such a time. And like Jean, I've lost both my parents in the last year and had both positive and negative experiences. The negative experiences have always come down to when we could not access palliative care. We could not access the staff who were trained. As soon as they came into the picture, then fantastic palliative care, quality care was delivered. But we need our health systems connected to ensure that this happens. Thanks everyone for taking time out of your day today to attend, and we were delighted to have so many people attend, and thank you for your time.